Hello, once more, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, back here on YouTube. I'm doing my 2024 Big Ten football predictions here, week number 6 getting started. Like I said on Tuesday, I don't have my computer with me, so I can't show you the standings, but I did go 8-1 last week, and after going 8-1 last week, my personal season record is now 51-15 through the 5 weeks. Here in week 6, we have 8 games on the schedule, starting out with this first one between Michigan State and Oregon on Friday night tomorrow. So let's get started with that one prediction right away. And first of all, storyline of this matchup is Michigan State getting ready to go on the road after losing 38-7 to Ohio State last week. And Michigan State going to Oregon with Dylan Gabriel, their quarterback, who has been all but normal in the Big Ten this year as a first-year Big Ten team. They're one of the 4 remaining unbeatens in the Big Ten, and all 4 teams are in action this week. We'll talk about them all today for the most part. So with that being said, Oregon, Washington State tomorrow night on Friday night. You know, the only Big Ten team that was in the original Big Ten last year that's gone west and won has been Indiana, as they went out to win a few weeks ago at UCLA and won 42-10. And for Michigan State to travel to Eugene tomorrow night, it's going to be a tough game. Oregon's unbeaten still. Michigan State, they're having a down year just like last year, and I'm not so sure Michigan State's going to stick with them in this game. But I do think Oregon and Dylan Gabriel are going to run away this matchup here tomorrow night. With that being said, I think Oregon picks up a big game win in their first Big Ten home game, as I do think they follow up the 34-13 win after beating UCLA last week. I do think Oregon wins at home this week and remains unbeaten. So give Oregon the win there for Saturday, for tomorrow night. Moving on to the next matchup. We're staying in the Big Ten here, going to Madison, Wisconsin, at Purdue coming up on Saturday for you all. And for any of you who are Big Ten fans, the storyline of this matchup between Purdue and Wisconsin is this. Wisconsin's 19-game winning streak against Purdue in this matchup. Purdue hasn't won a game against Wisconsin since 2003, to say the least. So over 19 years almost. And Wisconsin, if they can win tomorrow, they're going to make it 20 straight games with a win against Purdue. And I think Purdue, being a team that's lost 20 straight, if you're losing 19 games in a row to a team, it's not really a rivalry, but this is not a rivalry. This is a matchup where a team comes in losing 19 in a row. And if they can't win, it's going to be tough. And I do think Purdue and Wisconsin, I do think this game is going to be interesting. Purdue's played good so far this year, but there's been some times they've been bad too. Like last week, they lost 28-10 to Nebraska at home. And I think going up to Madison, it's a tough place to play, tough environment. And I do think Wisconsin pulls in another one. I do think the Badgers win their 20th straight game against Purdue in this matchup here on the season. Next up, staying up, we're going to Penn State, Happy Valley, UCLA Bruins coming in their first road Big Ten matchup as they have to travel to Penn State tomorrow on Saturday this week. And talking about this one, Penn State coming off a big win to get them to 5-0, or get them to 5-0 at the 21-7 win against Illinois. A game that I thought Illinois would keep close, but it wasn't really close at all last week for Penn State for the most part. Penn State ran away late. It was tied at 7.5. They ran away with it late in the game. And Penn State just showed up that they're the better Big Ten team. They proved that they're remain unbeaten, which they did. And that's got 5-0. For UCLA, they're coming off a team loss 34-13 against Oregon last week. And right now, as I look at it, UCLA's a team that's had some tough times this year so far, and since joining the Big Ten. 0-2 at home this year. One of those is a 42-10 loss to Indiana, which was in the Rose Bowl. Last week at the Rose Bowl, 34-13 loss. But having to travel east to Penn State, this is going to be a game for UCLA, which I think is going to be even tough. An early morning kickoff, 11 a.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Eastern time. I think it's going to be a tough game for UCLA overall. And I think that's going to make Penn State the team to win. And with that being said, I think Penn State will show UCLA how they play in Happy Valley, and I think UCLA is going to have a tough time, so I do think Penn State gets to win here in this matchup, as I do think they lose to Penn State, but we'll see. Our next matchup, we're going to Evanston, Illinois. The Northwestern Wildcats going in. They're taking on the unbeaten Indiana Hoosiers, one of the 4 remaining Big Ten teams, like I said. 5-0. Indiana against Northwestern. Speaking of this Indiana team, a team that I did not expect to see sitting at 5-0 through the first 5 weeks, they've showed teams they can win. They beat Maryland last week 42-28, and overall throughout the season, they've showed teams they can win. I may have picked against them once when they played UCLA, but to say this, Indiana's surprised me so far with where they are at. And I think I predicted them to finish near the bottom half of the Big Ten this year. Out of the 18 teams, and they're proving people wrong this year at 5-0 so far, which has really shocked me with my predictions because Indiana's proven people wrong. And Northwestern, on the other hand, they're coming in on a year where they've had a tough season, some tough games, some tough stretches. They're hanging in there at the moment. They're the first 4 games they played, but looking at Indiana overall on paper, Indiana's the better team in this matchup, which I think they are. And if you look at Northwestern, this is going to be a home game. Can they beat Indiana? I think they're going to keep it close, but I don't know if they're going to win. With that being said, I think Indiana pulls out a win to get to 6-0, as I do think they become the first Big Ten team, one of the first Big Ten teams to be bowl eligible, just like Penn State. So I do think Indiana gets a 6-0 as well. Moving on. Next matchup in Columbus between the Iowa Hawkeyes and the 5-0 Ohio State Buckeyes, 2 teams in the Big Ten. Ohio State, 38-7 win against Michigan State last week, and I'll just say this at the moment about Ohio State. Ohio State's a team they've showed they can win. They had some big wins this year, 30-7 last week against Michigan State. But this time around, a home game against Iowa, a game where I think is going to be a little tough for them, and a game where I think Iowa can keep it close if Caleb Johnson can run the ball well, and if Cade McNamara can stay within himself and not hurt himself, not play bad like he started like a few weeks ago when he played against Minnesota and started out terribly in the first half, tied at 14.5, and then Iowa ran away with it in the second half and won it. Overall, I think it's going to be. I think Iowa can keep it close for the majority of the game early on. Till about halftime. After half, I think Ohio State's going to run away with it for sure. Unfortunately, and that's what happens when you play in Columbus. Iowa hasn't won there since 1990, and they went against Ohio State maybe once in every 10 years. And the last time that happened was in 2017, about 6-7 years ago overall. But with that being said, I do think Ohio State comes out and gets to win, but I think it's going to be a close game for the most part until at least halftime. And then I think Ohio State pulls away. Probably win by 2 touchdowns at least. So, but I do think the Buckeyes get the win on the game. Moving on, next game. This one. Rutgers coming in. Taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers as they come into town. And looking at this one, Nebraska, Rutgers last week. Rutgers got a 21-18 win against Washington last week, which was pretty good on their part, I thought. And looking at this matchup overall, Nebraska, a tough team playing at home against a Nebraska team playing against a Rutgers team. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. I do think Rutgers keeps it close for the most part in the matchup after winning 21-18 against Washington last week. And looking at Nebraska, their team, they've got one loss this year. I think it's going to be a game that Nebraska and Rutgers keep it close. I think it's going to come down to whichever team makes the least mistakes in this matchup. With that being said, I do think Nebraska gets a win at home, a key win at home in the Big Ten this week on a Saturday afternoon. Moving on to the night games. We have Michigan going into Seattle to play the Washington Huskies. Rematch of the college football playoff championship game from last year, which is interesting to see for the most part. And with that being said, Michigan and Washington, they've had some tough times this year. They're one of the 2-loss Big Ten teams out there. Unfortunately, one of the 2-loss Big Ten teams. And Washington, they lost 21-18 to Rutgers, and then they lost to Washington State. But one loss in conference overall. If you look at it on paper, Michigan, they're also a 1-loss Big Ten team. Their only loss this year. 1-loss team. Their only loss, though, is to Texas, though, non-conference matchup. But looking at it on paper, it's a Washington team that's little different from the national championship game from last year. Last year, the national championship game, Michigan ran away with most of the game. Washington only got like 1 or 2 touchdowns last year, if I remember correctly. But looking at this game on paper, I think it's going to be a tough game for Michigan to go out west to play Washington. We're going to have to see what happens there in this game, I think. Overall, and looking at it right now, I think Washington's going to be the team, and Michigan, both these teams are going to be pretty good. I do like Michigan, though, on the road here in this one to surprise people, as I do think they give Washington their second straight Big Ten loss and the first loss at home this year to a Big Ten team. So give me the Wolverine, give me Michigan there in that one, the night game. Last but not least, we have the USC Trojans making their first trip into Big Ten territory as they head to Minnesota to Huntington Bake Sam to take out the Golden Gophers this weekend. Should be a fun matchup to see overall. And with that being said, I do think USC and Minnesota. I do think Minnesota playing at home against the USC Trojans, I do think they're going to try to make it a good game. I think USC is going to learn some things after going to Michigan a few weeks ago and losing out on the road. I do think USC is going to learn some things this week about their team, about traveling to Midwest. Again, having to travel to Minnesota, I do think they're going to learn some things about traveling to Minnesota. And one of those things I think is going to be is, will Minnesota beat you on their home turf? Yes, they could. Minnesota's proved that they can beat teams at home, and I think that happens. I think this game will be close, though. At the end of the day, I do think USC gets the win, though, but I think Minnesota keeps it close for the most part. Unfortunately, I do think Minnesota loses this one again. So there you have it. That's my Week 6 Big Ten predictions. Hope you all enjoyed the Week number 6 Big Ten predictions. With that being said, I'll be right back here next week for Week number 7, next Thursday. So I'll see you then. Please remember to watch, like, subscribe. Don't forget to tell our friends as well to do the same if they haven't done so. Also, don't forget to hit that notification button below so you know when there's a new video. With that being said, have a good day. Stay safe. Peace out. I'll see you right back here next Thursday. Bye for now. Peace out, everyone. See you next week. Bye.